He's playing, practicing football, and I'm sitting in the truck next to him. You may have heard that the bankruptcy court finalized a decision, and that's been going on for some time now, and has decided that I cannot go bankrupt, that bankruptcy has been denied, that there will be no discharge through bankruptcy. And anyway, it's an interesting development because St. Luke's and Natasha Erickson, Dr. Natasha Erickson, and Chris Roth, and Tracy Jungman, those are the ones who sued me. They have taken everything that they could already. So that's already been decided. They've taken, my business assets, they've taken my home, they've taken my bank accounts. And the only thing that I was able to preserve were the things that I took with me to Utah, and I basically had to buy them back. And so ultimately they took those too because I had to buy them back. But at least we have some vehicles and a few other things. So the point being is that they have taken everything that I have, everything that they can take, which is around $5 million worth of assets. Now, then I filed, bankruptcy because the issue is not about, and never was when it comes to the bankruptcy, it was never about trying to protect what I had because I had to file Chapter 7, which is a liquidation. So I was going to lose everything I had anyway. That was not the point. The point was being able to move forward and move on. And so I could basically provide for my family, and just put this all behind me and move on. However, St. Luke's, Chris Roth, Natasha Erickson, Dr. Natasha Erickson, and Tracy Jungman, and the St. Luke's attorneys came after me full force in the bankruptcy proceedings and has sued me twice. They don't call it a lawsuit in the bankruptcy, but it's basically the same thing. Adversarial proceedings is what they call it. And to kind of give you an idea, I would guess that around an average bankruptcy probably has around 25 to 50 docket items. And these are the items that you enter, into the court. And mine already, and it's only a little over a year, has over 500 docket items. And the majority of those are from St. Luke's or from trying to defend myself from them. And so they have dumped, who knows, another $1 million or more into legal fees, into the bankruptcy proceedings. I mean, these are very extensive. I mean, everybody involved in it, the judge, the trustee, the trustee's attorneys, and trustee had to get an attorney because St. Luke's became adversarial with them. And all of them have, mentioned and made comments about, the unusual circumstances of this bankruptcy. Anyway, now the court, because St. Luke's went to the court and says, we don't think that Ammon should be able to go bankrupt because of the findings in the Idaho court when they had the trial. Remember, I didn't participate. I did not participate. I didn't feel like I could do it, and I did not participate. And I might get into that later, but the main thing is they had a trial. St. Luke's lied to the jury. St. Luke's presented altered videos to the jury, and of course they garnished a defamation lawsuit, and then got the court in Idaho to declare that it was malicious intent, that I did, in fact, they said that I did all that I did in Idaho because I wanted to hurt St. Luke's, and Dr. Natasha Erickson, and the CEO Chris Roth, and Tracy Jungman. And I didn't even know their names. I didn't even know who the CEO was. I didn't care at all. All I cared about is getting that little baby back to his mother. And in fact, Nancy Baskin, the judge, the one who presided over the trial, when the trial was done, she actually said that no reasonable person would believe that I did what I did for any other reason but to hurt St. Luke's. And that's just all of you that were there, or anybody that was there. Go back and look at my videos. You can see that it was for advocating for that little baby. And I will say this, that Idaho has made it so that it is legal to steal children from their parents. And they have made it so that it is illegal and punishable if anybody stands up for that child or the parents. And that's a terrible precedence for Idaho. You have made it legal to steal babies from loving and caring parents. And then anybody who advocates for them, you've made it legal to destroy their life. Now, back to the bankruptcy and not being able to go bankrupt and what the implications of that are, because I think they're huge. Because ultimately, at this point now, every dime I make, anything anybody gives me, anything that I am able to increase or inquire belongs to St. Luke's. It belongs to CEO Chris Roth, Dr. Natasha Erickson, and Tracy Jungman, and the St. Luke's health system. And so if I go out and work, and let's say I go out and work hard, and I work and I make a couple $100 that day, well, that couple $100 does not belong to me. It belongs to St. Luke's and all on these other parties. This doctor and the CEO and this nurse, it belongs to them. And if I the next day do the same thing and I make $250, it belongs to them. And this goes on forever, or until somehow I make $53 million and pay them back. Now, I think that it's pretty evident that this would be is making me a slave. That it absolutely is, making me a slave in the supposedly most free country in the world, where I am supposed to be free, and where the laws, including constitutionally, have protected freedom, or is supposed to protect freedom, and yet I am nothing but a slave to St. Luke's, to Chris Roth, to Dr. Natasha Erickson, and Tracy Jungman. And they have made me their slave. And they have done it out of spitefulness, because there was no reason why they shouldn't allow me to go bankrupt. I mean, think about it. They had already taken pretty much all the major assets that I had. The only thing I had left is some furniture and a couple vehicles and my tools and so forth. That was pretty much it. And so the fact that they would stop me from going bankrupt shows how evil they are. It shows how evil Chris Roth is, and Tracy Jungman, and Dr. Natasha Erickson, because the fact and the whole the St. Luke's health system, how evil, because they already took everything I have, and the only reason why they opposed the bankruptcy was so that they can make me their slave. That's it. I do want to read the 14th Amendment. As you know, the 14th Amendment was It was set, it's a controversial amendment, but it was set after the Civil War. And it says this. Um, let's see, there's the 15th Amendment. Okay, well, I don't know if I want to read the whole thing, but here's the privileges. Say shall deprive any person. Okay. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Okay, there's some controversy there, but no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Anyway, it goes on. It talks about, what they shouldn't do, and basically it outlaws slavery. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, I guess, at this point. I will later. But this was supposed to be where they rid themselves of slavery, but in this process, they have made me their slave. And the thing is like, what do I do? Do I live the rest of my life as their slave? Well, you guys, you know that I won't do that. So then what do they do? Just keep coming and sending the local law enforcement to keep coming and just with their guns keep taking what I make. I'm not going to voluntarily give it to them. I mean, I'm not just going to write them a check every week. So are they going to just keep coming and sending law enforcement to point their guns at me and take everything from me that I make? Is that what St. Luke's is going to do? And then I have to ask this question: At what point do I have a right to defend myself? I mean, what point do I have a right to say I insist on living free? And that is a big question. That's a question that I think has to be answered across this country, actually. What right do we have? Because here you have, it's a classic scenario of a massive institution using the law to oppress other people. I mean, this is a classic Western, right? Where the big, massive corporate rancher, if you will, is trying to take and control the land and oppress the small rancher. Or this is, the inner city story where, the rich and the powerful are trying to, oppress and live off of the little guy. I mean, this is that story. And at what point do I or anybody else have a right to defend ourselves? Because I actually did not oppose them in Idaho. I just wanted peace. I just, let them get through the process, and, I just let them get through it and just leave me alone. I just want peace. And then they wouldn't. So they kept, what they kept doing, and the reason why I had to flee Idaho was because the St. Luke's, Chris Roth, and the attorneys there, Dr. Natasha Erickson and Tracy Jungman, they kept going to the court. Well, first of all, at the beginning of the proceedings, they got the court to issue a gag order, right? A gag order. And they did this because they didn't want me speaking the truth of what happened. So they got a gag order. And then anytime I would speak out in public, like this right here, then they would get a court order. And then the court order would issue warrants, and with the court order, they'd issue warrants, and that's why the sheriff kept coming to my house, and they arrested me at that football banquet, and this kept going on and on. Every time I would speak, they would get more, court orders, issues, then contempts, and then they would issue a warrant for my arrest. And it got to the point where I could tell that the sheriff in Gem County was not going to defend my rights. He was just going to do what he was told. And his deputies were just going to do what they were told. And they kept pitching me until multiple times the sheriff was surrounding my house. He's got guys on the hills. I don't know if they're snipers or what they are, but they're surrounding my house, knocking on the doors, terrifying my wife and children. And this kept escalating to the point where I could see there was going to be a flashpoint, and so I chose to leave. I chose peace. So I chose peace during the lawsuit. I wanted peace. I chose peace when they started trying to arrest me and do all these things, and I actually chose to abandon my home, my community, displace my children, leave my businesses, all of that, and move to Idaho. And I did it for peace. And I said, okay, they continued to pursue me, through the courts and in Utah here, till it got so bad they seized all my bank accounts and all of these things. Till it got so bad, I'm like, okay, the only peaceful way to get through this is to do bankruptcy. So I filed for bankruptcy last year in July. And then they came and opposed that, aggressively, with massive amounts of litigation and legal fees, all of that. Over 500 docket items in the bankruptcy case. And so that didn't work. And then the judge, they got the judge to issue where I can't go bankrupt. And so now what? They'll go back to trying to collect. They'll go back to garnishing. They'll go back to destroying anything that I try to touch or take it. And at what point do I have a right to defend myself? And the perpetrators in this are, number one, Chris Roth, the CEO. And then number two is his lead attorney, Stidham. He's a very wicked man. And so those two, and then number three would be probably Dr. Natasha Erickson, and then number four would probably be Tracy Jungman. They are culpable, and they need to make a decision, because I'm not going to live as their slave. I'm not. And that's a warning to them. And it's not a threat, it's a warning. You need to leave me alone. You need to leave my family alone. Chris Roth, I am warning you in the name of Jesus Christ. Leave my family alone. Leave me alone. Stidham, I am warning you in the name of Jesus Christ. Leave my family alone. Leave me alone. Dr. Natasha Erickson, you started all of this. You threatened that little family with CPS if they didn't obey your medical demands. Then you lied about it. And I'm telling you, leave my family alone. In the name of Jesus Christ, leave me and my family alone. Leave us alone. And Tracy Jungman, I know you were just brought in it as a name, just kind of so that they have a roundabout way of a story of sympathy. But your name is on it. And you're culpable. And I'm warning you in the name of Jesus Christ, leave my family alone. Leave me and my family alone. Leave us alone. If you leave me alone, there will be never any trouble. But if you do not, then I cannot live this life without freedom. I refuse to. and I will have to be forced to defend myself. And any officer, any agent of the government or otherwise who tries to take away my liberty, you will be unjust. It will not be justice. And I want to warn you in the name of Jesus Christ too to leave me alone. I have asked for peace for years. I've asked to be left alone for years. I've offered to give everything that I have for peace, and I have not been afforded it because of your wickedness. And so I demand, again, in the name of Jesus Christ, leave me and my family alone. And that is a warning to anybody, to the judges, to anybody. Now, as it goes on with this bankruptcy, there is a whole bunch of procedural stuff that has to keep going. So they'll drag it on. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't drag it on for another 6, 7, 8 months. I know it's crazy because, basically now they're going to all discuss about how they're going to divvy up everything that they've taken from me. And that's between, the court, that's between the trustee, that's between the St. Luke's and all their parties. And that's what's going to go on. And, I do have to participate in that, unfortunately, at some level. But that is where we're at. And I just have to say that the courts, and through their corruption and through their allowing, corruption to go on, such as altered videos, Judge Baskin, you allowed an altered video to be presented to the jury. Now, maybe you didn't know about it, but I'm telling you about it now. You allowed lies to be presented to the jury, flat out lies. I won't go into them now, maybe later. But I've been rambling on for another 22 minutes here, so I'm going to wrap up. I do want to say this to all those people who said that I should have, defended myself in the Idaho court, and that's the reason why I'm in this position in the first place. First of all, I want you to remember that I was running for governor, and I felt I was a serious run, one that garnished more independent votes than any other candidate in the history of Idaho. It was a serious run. It was a serious effort to educate the people of Idaho. And I would have had to leave that campaign and go fight. And I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to continue, that the campaign was more important. And that was a real choice, whether I was going to put all the money, everything into defending myself or continue to campaign. And don't you think for 1 minute that they didn't know that that was a choice I was going to have to make. They wanted to pull me off the campaign trail and pull me into their wicked courts. That's one. Two is, I have to be honest with you, I had spent so much time in prison and so much time in court that I just couldn't stomach the idea of spending more time in all the court proceedings and all of that. I just couldn't stomach it. And I really avoided avoided it because of that. I wanted peace. That was a huge reason. I wanted peace. Also, my understanding of the law was that they were suing me for $50,000. Well, I couldn't even retain an attorney for that. And then ultimately they amended that, but it went from basically $50,000 to $53 million. Figure that. And then just the money and time, of course. But also, I have an analogy for you. Because the justice system is like, let's say there's an older man, and he sees these young men that are, built and they're trained to fight and all of that. And he sees them steal a lady's backpack. And so he points out to the public, he says, hey, they stole that backpack from that lady. That lady's innocent. They stole the backpack. And these 4 or 5 young, strong men that are trained to fight, they come and they turn on that old man and they start beating him to death. Or not, just beating him down, beating him, and kicking him and beating him. And he's covering himself, but they're just beating him. And then everybody else around him is looking at the whole thing, hardly doing anything. And then they say, well, it's the old man's fault because he didn't defend himself well enough. And that's what our justice system has come to. Basically, that if you don't spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars in the courts defending yourself against, very skilled, well-funded attorneys, teams of attorneys, if you don't do that, then somehow it's your fault. Well, my friends, that's not justice. It's not justice at all. And I'll leave you with that.